Welcome to Dolphin Dive Daily, your go-to spot for everything Miami Dolphins. If you bleed aqua and orange, hit that subscribe button and join the pod. Alright guys, buckle up, because today we've got a deep dive into one of the most talked about stories in the NFL right now. The future of Miami Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel. You've seen the headlines, you've heard the noise, and after that brutal collapse against the Carolina Panthers, it seems like everybody's wondering the same thing. Is McDaniel's time in Miami running out? But according to a new report, the situation might not be as dire as the rumors make it sound. And we're going to unpack every layer of this, from ownership politics to locker room vibes, and what it all means for the Dolphins' future. So grab your coffee, sit back, and let's talk football, Dolphins style. Let's start with the basics. The Miami Dolphins went into this season with playoff expectations, not just because of their explosive offense, but because ownership has been preaching Super Bowl window for 2 years now. Yet somehow, after 5 games, they sit at 1-4, and their latest loss wasn't just any loss. It was a meltdown of epic proportions. Miami had a 17-point lead over the Carolina Panthers, a team that came in winless, searching for answers, and led by a rookie quarterback still finding his rhythm. For 3 quarters, it looked like the Dolphins were going to handle business. But then, everything that could go wrong did. Missed tackles, mental lapses, questionable play calls. It was the kind of implosion that gets fan bases calling for heads to roll. And right in the center of it all stood Mike McDaniel, walking off the field, head down, looking like a man carrying the weight of an entire franchise on his shoulders. Now, the narrative all week has been that McDaniel is sitting on the hottest seat in the league. Social media has been ablaze with Fire McDaniel threads. Radio shows in South Florida are filled with callers saying they've seen enough, and the general vibe is that the Dolphins' front office has lost patience. But then came ESPN's Adam Schefter, a guy who doesn't just throw things at the wall. When Schefter talks, it's because he's hearing it from inside the building. And on the Pat McAfee show Monday, Schefter dropped a pretty surprising nugget. The Dolphins, he said, are not close to making any coaching change right now. In fact, ownership wants to be patient. That word, patient, jumped out at everyone, because patience is not something Stephen Ross, the Dolphins owner, is particularly known for. But Schefter's tone was clear. Yes, the season's been disappointing. Yes, McDaniel has questions to answer. But as of now, the team isn't pulling the plug. That's not to say McDaniel's completely safe. Schefter made that clear too. The NFL is a what have you done for me lately league. Things change fast. We've seen coaches go from safe to fired in less than 48 hours. One ugly performance on national television can swing an entire narrative. And if there's one thing Ross hates more than losing, it's embarrassment. But as of now, the Dolphins are choosing to ride it out, hoping, praying maybe, that the guy who once looked like the smartest young coach in football can turn this thing around. Let's rewind for a second to remember how we got here. When Mike McDaniel was hired, he was supposed to be the guy, the young offensive wizard, the cool, quirky mind who would unlock TUA TAGOVAILOA and turn Miami into a modern offensive powerhouse. And for a while, it looked like that's exactly what was happening. His first 2 seasons had moments of brilliance, creative play designs, motion-heavy schemes that left defenses guessing, and a team that genuinely looked like it was on the rise. But the NFL has a cruel way of catching up. Opponents adjusted, injuries piled up, and suddenly, the magic that made McDaniel the darling of the coaching world has started to fade. Right now, McDaniel's overall record sits at 29-27. Respectable, but not spectacular. In the NFL, respectable doesn't keep you employed for long, especially when you're staring down back-to-back playoff misses. And that's where the tension comes in. The Dolphins' ownership group, led by Ross and CEO Tom Garfinkel, has invested heavily in this roster. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Terran Armstead, a defense loaded with talent. They've spent big money and traded premium draft picks to build a contender. And yet, they're sitting at the bottom of their division, behind teams like Buffalo and New York who seem to have found their identities while Miami keeps searching for theirs. But here's the twist. There's still belief in McDaniel inside the organization. People close to the team have described him as deeply respected in the building, not just for his football IQ, but for how he connects with players. That connection, that human element, is part of why the Dolphins aren't ready to panic just yet. Stephen Ross has seen what happens when you cycle through coaches too quickly. The Dolphins have been stuck in that pattern for nearly 2 decades, from Joe Philbin to Adam Gase to Brian Flores. Constant turnover, constant rebuilds. Ross doesn't want to go down that road again unless he absolutely has to. And that's why Schefter's report makes sense. This isn't just about one bad loss. It's about a larger philosophical shift. Miami wants to build something sustainable, not just chase quick fixes. Now, let's talk about what's really killing McDaniel's case right now, the defense. For all the offensive innovation he's brought, the Dolphins' defense has been, to put it kindly, inconsistent. There are games where they look elite, flying around, forcing turnovers, dominating the line of scrimmage. And then there are games like Sunday, where they completely unravel. Missed assignments, poor tackling angles, blown coverages. You can't give up 31 points to a Panthers team ranked near the bottom in almost every offensive category and expect to keep your job secure. And while McDaniel isn't the defensive coordinator, the head coach always takes the blame. That's part of the gig. The offense hasn't exactly been helping either. TUA TAGOVAILOA has been up and down, and there's growing frustration about his decision-making in key moments. When things are going well, McDaniel's offense looks like poetry in motion, timing routes, jet sweeps, misdirection galore. But when it breaks down, it looks overly complicated, almost cute for the sake of being cute. That's the fine line McDaniel walks as a creative coach. Sometimes genius can look like overthinking, especially when you're losing games you should win. And fans don't care how clever a play call looks if it ends in a turnover on downs. But here's where things get really interesting. Despite all the outside noise, McDaniel hasn't lost the locker room. Players have continued to back him publicly. Tyreek Hill said earlier this week that Coach McDaniel's one of the smartest guys I've ever been around, and others have echoed that sentiment. There's frustration, sure, but not mutiny. That's a crucial distinction, because once players tune a coach out, it's over. That's when ownership starts making calls. For now, though, the Dolphins' locker room still believes they can turn it around, which means McDaniel's message is still resonating. Still, the schedule doesn't get easier. The Dolphins have upcoming matchups against the Bills, 49ers, and Chiefs, all legitimate Super Bowl contenders. If they go 0-3 in that stretch, it's hard to imagine the patience Schefter mentioned lasting much longer. Ross is known for big reactions, especially when national media starts roasting his team in prime time. But on the flip side, if McDaniel somehow navigates that gauntlet, wins 2 of those games, and steadies the ship, the narrative flips completely. Suddenly, he's the comeback story of the year, the coach who weathered the storm and found a way to save his job. And that's what makes this story so compelling. McDaniel's not just fighting for his job, he's fighting for his legacy as a young head coach, trying to prove he belongs. If he gets fired, the narrative shifts from offensive genius to couldn't handle the big chair. That's a tough label to shake. But if he survives this storm, it could be the moment that defines his career. The great coaches, the ones who last, all have a moment where it looks like the walls are closing in. McDaniel's moment might be happening right now. So what's next for Miami? Internally, the focus has to be on fundamentals. Tackling, execution, red zone efficiency. The flashy stuff is great when it works, but you can't build consistency on gadget plays. McDaniel knows that. He's talked about simplifying things, getting back to basics, but talk doesn't win games. The Dolphins need to show it on the field. Otherwise, the calls for change are only going to get louder. And if we're being honest, ownership patience is a luxury that can vanish overnight in this league. For now, though, Adam Schefter's report gives McDaniel something invaluable: time. Time to fix mistakes. Time to prove himself. Time to remind everyone why he was hired in the first place. Whether he makes the most of it, that's on him. But as of today, he's still the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, and the fight for his job, and maybe his reputation, is just beginning. Because make no mistake, this is a defining moment for the Dolphins organization. They can either rally behind their head coach and rediscover their identity, or spiral into another season of frustration and finger-pointing. And for McDaniel, it's the difference between being remembered as a bright young mind who figured it out, or just another name in the long list of almost coaches in Miami's post-Marino era. Whatever happens next, one thing's for sure. The next few weeks are going to tell us everything we need to know about Mike McDaniel, the Miami Dolphins, and just how much patience really exists inside that building. Still with us? Then show some love. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What's your take on the Finns this week? The NFL world is buzzing, and if you thought the off-season drama had already peaked, think again. The latest whirlwind comes from none other than Miami Dolphins quarterback TUA TAGOVAILOA, who has reportedly broken his silence on a matter that has been simmering behind closed doors for months. Sources close to the team claim that TUA's words have sent shockwaves through the locker room and could reshape the landscape of the Dolphins franchise moving forward. According to insiders, TUA has openly expressed that no one on the roster actually wants a certain high-profile figure back in Miami, a statement that has instantly fueled speculation, whispers, and the kind of chatter that dominates every NFL social media thread within seconds. The timing of this revelation is as intriguing as the content itself, arriving just as fans are beginning to speculate about trades, draft picks, and the reshuffling of coaching priorities. It seems that behind the polished PR statements, there is a simmering tension, and TUA, perhaps tired of the silence, has decided to let the curtain lift ever so slightly on the internal dynamics of the Dolphins' locker room. While the identity of the person at the center of this storm is well known in football circles, it is the implications of TUA's stance that are truly igniting discussions from South Beach to sports talk radio across the country. Imagine the scene. A locker room where camaraderie is paramount, yet beneath the surface, there is a palpable undercurrent of resistance. According to those familiar with the situation, TUA's comments were not made in the heat of the moment or during an emotional outburst. Rather, they came as a deliberate statement, reflective of months of reflection and conversations behind closed doors. The quarterback, who has often been praised for his calm demeanor and team-oriented approach, reportedly articulated that the idea of this individual returning to the Dolphins is not welcomed by the roster. This, in turn, raises countless questions about team chemistry, leadership, and how front office decisions are perceived by the players themselves. Could this be a subtle warning to management, a nudge signaling that bringing someone back might disrupt the balance TUA and his teammates have been striving to maintain? Or is it simply an offhand remark that has been amplified by the rumor mill, twisted into a headline-grabbing revelation? Either way, the implications are massive. Analysts are already dissecting every possible angle, speculating on whether this sentiment might influence draft strategies, free agency decisions, or even the Dolphins' approach to contract negotiations. The ripple effect of one player's opinion, especially one as central to the team as TUA, cannot be underestimated. For fans, this kind of statement is fuel for endless debate. Social media platforms have erupted with heated takes, memes, and fan theories. Some are championing TUA for his honesty, claiming that the locker room finally has a voice that speaks truth to power. Others argue that it is dangerous for a player to publicly cast doubt on potential acquisitions, warning that it could destabilize relationships with the front office or discourage high-profile players from even considering Miami as a destination. The rumor itself has taken on a life of its own, spreading like wildfire through podcasts, YouTube channels, and sports blogs, each outlet interpreting the subtle nuances of TUA's reported words in slightly different ways. The lack of an official statement from the Dolphins only adds to the intrigue, making every passing day an opportunity for speculation and conjecture. Meanwhile, the quarterback remains at the center of the narrative, both praised for his courage and scrutinized for stepping into territory that is typically reserved for team executives. The idea that the locker room as a whole could oppose the return of a certain figure raises uncomfortable but fascinating questions about hierarchy, influence, and player power in professional football. Consider, too, the timing in relation to the Dolphins' performance trajectory. Miami has been in a delicate balancing act for years, trying to blend youthful talent with experienced leadership, all while navigating the mercurial nature of NFL success. The whisper that TUA allegedly dropped is more than a casual observation. It is a statement with strategic consequences. If players are truly resistant to a certain individual returning, how might that affect morale, locker room trust, and on-field performance? Could a forced reunion spark tension or even fractures among key contributors? Sports insiders suggest that locker room chemistry is often underestimated in its importance to a team's overall success, and a single controversial acquisition can ripple outward in ways that stats and scouting reports cannot capture. TUA's alleged position, therefore, is not just a quip or a passing remark. It is a glimpse into the complex, often hidden, dynamics that shape how a team functions day to day. And while front offices generally try to manage narratives carefully, when a prominent player like TUA reportedly takes a stance, the story takes on a life of its own, influencing public perception, media coverage, and even potential negotiations behind closed doors. Of course, in the age of instant news and 24/7 coverage, any hint of locker room dissent is magnified. Fans are dissecting interviews, scrutinizing social media posts, and analyzing every nuance of team behavior to see if there are subtle confirmations of what TUA allegedly said. Former players have weighed in with their own takes, some expressing understanding of a locker room's desire to maintain stability, others questioning whether players should publicly weigh in on potential personnel decisions. The rumor has created a landscape where speculation is king, and every small action by the Dolphins' management or coaching staff is viewed through the lens of TUA's reported statement. Even casual observers are now trying to read between the lines of team practices, preseason interviews, and any hint of social interaction that might confirm or deny the claim. In a league where perception can influence reality just as much as performance, TUA's words, whether completely accurate or slightly embellished, have become a catalyst for discussion, analysis, and yes, even controversy. Meanwhile, the person at the center of this rumor has remained publicly silent, fueling further conjecture. Will this figure respond? Could they attempt a return despite the apparent resistance from the locker room? The possibilities are endless, and each scenario presents its own set of potential dramas. Sports media outlets are already speculating about behind-the-scenes negotiations, hypothetical trades, and the ripple effects across other teams that could be influenced by Miami's locker room sentiment. The quarterback's position adds even more weight to the conversation, as TUA is not just any player. He is the face of the franchise, a leader whose voice carries significant influence over teammates, fans, and analysts alike. The idea that the locker room might collectively oppose a return sends a powerful message to decision-makers. Player sentiment matters, and ignoring it could have consequences far beyond the playing field. Every move by the Dolphins in the coming months will be scrutinized, and any alignment, or lack thereof, with TUA's reported stance will be interpreted as either a sign of solidarity or a brewing conflict. As the story continues to unfold, the broader implications for the NFL cannot be ignored. TUA's rumored comments touch on themes of player power, organizational culture, and the delicate balance between management and athletes. In a league where trades, free agency, and draft picks are often guided by strategic calculations, the human element, the emotions, loyalties, and preferences of the players themselves, cannot be discounted. TUA's reported willingness to break the silence may inspire others to speak more openly about locker room dynamics, creating a ripple effect that could reshape how teams approach internal politics in the years to come. Fans are already imagining potential storylines, from tense locker room meetings to dramatic confrontations that could unfold during the season. Analysts are debating the strategic wisdom of either heeding or ignoring the quarterback's position, weighing the potential impact on both performance and public perception. In essence, what began as a single statement has exploded into a multifaceted discussion that touches every corner of the Dolphins organization and beyond, making TUA's alleged revelation one of the most talked-about rumors in recent NFL memory. While official confirmation remains elusive, the narrative itself has taken on a life of its own. Sports enthusiasts, bloggers, and YouTube commentators are dissecting every nuance, every potential implication, and every rumor that emerges in connection with TUA's alleged remarks. The allure of insider information, of being the first to understand what really goes on behind the locker room doors, is irresistible, and the story has become a magnet for speculation. Whether this is the start of a genuine locker room revolt, or simply the latest chapter in the ongoing saga of Miami Dolphins drama, it is clear that TUA TAGOVAILOA's voice has shifted the conversation. What was once whispered in hallways and locker rooms is now a topic of national attention, analyzed, debated, and shared by millions. As the NFL season approaches, one thing is certain. The Dolphins' locker room dynamics are no longer just an internal matter. They are a public spectacle, and TUA's alleged statement has ensured that every eye will be watching, every comment will be dissected, and every decision will be scrutinized in ways that could have lasting consequences for the team, the individual players, and the league as a whole. That's a wrap for today's dive. If you're loving the content, share it with a fellow Dolphins fan, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a splash. Fins up.